The cold glow of the screen washes over my face. My fingers hover above the mousepad. Steady. The cursor blinks over the confirm transfer button. My breath hitches, sharp and thin. Outside, the city hums, oblivious. Inside this sterile room, inside my own chest, a storm is gathering, silent and absolute. This isn't about money anymore. It's about everything they took. Everything he took. He thinks he won. He thinks he walked away clean, with her on his arm and my life savings in his pocket. He thinks I'm broken. He's wrong. Where are you watching from? What time is it there right now? If this story resonates with you, even a little, let me know in the comments. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know, bringing these stories to life. Life was a soft hum, a gentle rhythm of shared coffee in the mornings, the comfortable weight of his hand on my knee under the dinner table, the quiet rustle of pages turning as we read in separate chairs in the evenings. We built a life brick by brick, compromise by compromise, dream by dream. It wasn't a whirlwind romance, not the kind you see in movies, but it was real, solid, built on trust, on shared history, on the quiet promise of forever that settled between us like dust motes in the sunbeams of our living room. My inheritance wasn't just money. It was my father's legacy. He wasn't a wealthy man in the grand scheme of things, but he was careful, he was wise, and he loved me fiercely. Every dollar in that account represented his sacrifice, his foresight, his hope for my future. He saved and saved little by little, ensuring that I would have a cushion, a foundation, something to build on, something that was purely mine. It was the down payment for the future we'd always talked about, a small cottage by the lake, maybe, or a secure retirement, the freedom to breathe a little easier as we aged. It felt sacred, untouchable, a promise passed down through generations. We discussed it, of course. He knew about the money. We made plans. Our plans. The lake cottage was our lake cottage. Retirement was our retirement. It felt like an extension of us, a joint resource for a joint future. There was no sense of mine and his when it came to the big things, not really. We were a unit, a team. His dreams were mine. Mine were his. The lines were blurred by years of shared laughter, shared tears, shared bills, shared everything. The inheritance, like everything else, simply became part of the collective us. It sat in its separate account, a quiet reassurance, a safety net woven by a loving hand I missed every single day. It was the silent partner in our marriage, the promise of comfort whispering in the background. It was more than money. It was peace of mind, a connection to my past, a bridge to our future. It was the feeling of being truly grounded, truly safe, knowing that whatever life threw at us, we had this buffer. This security. This was the world I lived in. A world built on trust, on shared purpose, on the quiet, unwavering belief that the person sleeping next to me, the man who kissed me goodbye every morning, was my anchor, my safe harbor, my home. The mundane details of our days were steeped in this security. The way he left his coffee cup by the sink, the way I always straightened the rug he inevitably kicked crooked, the sound of his key in the lock at the end of the day. These weren't just habits. They were rituals of a shared life, small affirmations of continuity and reliability. My work was steady, fulfilling enough. His was more volatile, high-stress, demanding. I was the calm eye of his storm, or so I thought. The inheritance was the calm eye of our potential storm, a cushion against the inevitable bumps in the road. It was a symbol of stability in a chaotic world. A world I believed we faced together side by side, hand in hand. The first crack in the foundation wasn't a bang, but a whisper. A notification on my phone. A small, innocuous alert from the bank. Transfer complete. But it wasn't a transfer I had made. Not from my account. My blood ran cold. My inheritance account. The sacred one. The one I barely touched. A significant sum. Vanished. Just gone. My mind scrambled, trying to find a logical explanation. Fraud? A glitch? A mistake? I fumbled for my laptop, logging in, fingers trembling. The transaction history laid it bare. A transfer. Initiated from our joint account. The one linked to everything, the one he managed the finances from, the one I barely looked at, into my inheritance account and then immediately out again. To an account number I didn't recognize.
The date. The time.
My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird. This wasn't fraud. This was deliberate. This was personal. My hands shook as I scrolled further back in the joint account history. More transfers. Smaller ones at first, then larger, stretching back weeks. Payments to jewelers I'd never heard of. Expensive restaurants that weren't our usual spots. And then, the withdrawals. Large cash withdrawals, untraceable once they left the bank. A cold dread began to seep into my bones, heavier than any grief I had ever known. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about deception. Betrayal. The meticulous, calculated dismantling of the trust one had built my life on.
He was stealing from me.
Not just money, but the future my father had envisioned for me. The future we had envisioned. He wasn't just taking my inheritance. He was burning the bridge my father built, brick by precious brick. The air felt thin, hard to breathe. The quiet house, moments ago my sanctuary, now felt like a cage. Every object, every shared photograph, every memory felt tainted, poisoned by the cold, hard reality staring back at me from the screen. The rhythm of our life hadn't just been disrupted. It had been a lie. A carefully constructed illusion designed to keep me comfortable, quiet, and oblivious while he systematically plundered the one thing that was unequivocally mine. The shock was a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. Denial clawed at the edges of my mind. It couldn't be him. Not him. Not the man I loved. But the digital paper trail was damning. Unforgiving. Each entry a knife twist. Each transfer a deliberate act of theft, executed by the person I trusted most in the world. The first few days were a blur of disbelief and frantic, useless action. I tried to call the bank. They needed authorization I couldn't provide without him. I tried to retrace the steps, to understand where the money had gone after it left the strange account number. Dead ends. The money had vanished into the digital ether, untraceable without access to his devices, his accounts, the parts of his life he suddenly seemed determined to keep hidden. I confronted him, of course. Not with the full truth of what I knew, not yet. I was too afraid. Too vulnerable. I started small. Honey, did you see that notification about a transfer from my account? I tried to keep my voice light, casual, but it felt like shards of ice in my throat. His reaction was immediate, sharp, defensive. Oh, yeah, that. Just moving some funds around. Business thing. Don't worry about it, business thing? Moving my inheritance around? The lies were clumsy, transparent to my newly sharpened senses, but delivered with a practiced ease that made my stomach turn. I pressed gently. But it went out of my account. Where did it go? He snapped. Look, I said don't worry about it. It's handled. Just trust me, trust me. The words were a mockery, a cruel joke in the face of the digital ledger on my laptop. I felt a tremor run through me, a strange mix of fear and a cold, growing anger. This wasn't just a financial indiscretion. This was a deliberate cover-up. He wasn't just stealing, he was actively gaslighting me, making me doubt my own eyes, my own instincts. I felt the foundation of my reality begin to crumble. Every conversation became a tightrope walk. I smiled. I nodded. I went through the motions of our normal life, all while a freezing current of suspicion and dread flowed beneath the surface. I watched him, really watched him for the first time in years. The way his eyes flickered when I asked a probing question, the way he was suddenly secretive with his phone, taking calls in another room. The easy intimacy we shared evaporated, replaced by a vast, silent chasm of unspoken accusations and hidden truths. I felt like a spy in my own home, gathering intel on an enemy I had once loved more than life itself. My sleep became fractured, haunted by nightmares of empty bank accounts and his smiling, lying face. The weight of the secret I carried felt crushing. I couldn't talk to friends, to family. How do you tell the people who celebrated your marriage that your husband is systematically stealing from you, from your dead father's legacy? Shame coiled in my gut, a bitter counterpoint to the anger. How had I been so blind? So trusting? So utterly naive? The world outside my window looked the same. Cars driving by, people walking dogs, the sun rising and setting, but my internal landscape had shifted dramatically. It was a barren, desolate place, stripped bare by betrayal. I tried to access his phone records, his email, desperate for concrete proof beyond the bank statements. But he was careful.
Passwords changed.
Devices locked down. He was building walls, fortress walls, around his secret life. And I was outside, shivering in the cold. Every failed attempt to get information chipped away at my composure, leaving me raw and exposed. The helplessness was a suffocating blanket. I felt trapped, cornered, with no clear path forward. The problem intensified, growing like a malignant tumor within the body of our marriage. The small transfers continued, draining my inheritance account bit by bit, funneled through the mysterious intermediary. And the evidence mounted, circumstantial but damning. A shopping bag from a high-end jewelry store, hastily shoved into the back of his closet. A restaurant receipt for two, dated a night he told me he was working late. A string of text messages on his unlocked tablet, just a fleeting glimpse before he snatched it away, filled with pet names I'd never heard him use, plans that didn't involve me. The pieces clicked together with sickening precision. The missing money, the jeweler, the expensive dates. It wasn't just theft. It was theft to fund a double life. To fund her. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. He wasn't just taking my inheritance. He was using my father's legacy to build a future with someone else. To buy her a ring. To pay for their secret moments. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. My anger burned hotter now, melting away the layers of shame and fear. It was a cold, hard fire, fueled by righteous indignation and a deepening sense of violation. I wasn't just a victim of infidelity. I was a victim of calculated financial abuse, of a deliberate plan to strip me of my security and independence. I sought legal counsel. The divorce lawyer listened sympathetically, her expression grim. "It's messy," she said. "Tracing funds can be difficult, especially if he's careful. You'll need concrete proof of where the money went, and that it was used for non-marital purposes. Like buying a mistress a ring? The legal system, it seemed, was slow, bureaucratic, and required mountains of evidence I didn't have access to. He controlled the joint accounts, the primary paper trail. He was always one step ahead, covering his tracks. The lawyer spoke of depositions, subpoenas, lengthy court battles that could take years, draining me financially and emotionally. Years of fighting to reclaim what was rightfully mine, while he potentially spent the money he stole on his new life. The prospect was soul-crushing. I felt trapped in a legal maze with no clear exit. Meanwhile, the tension at home was a suffocating shroud. We moved through our days like strangers, the air thick with unspoken accusations. He knew I suspected something. I could see it in his eyes, the way he tensed when I entered a room, the forced casualness of his voice. But he never admitted anything. He maintained the lie, the carefully constructed facade of the dutiful husband with the annoying wife who worried too much about money. His ability to compartmentalize, to look me in the eye and lie, was terrifying. It revealed a side of him I never knew existed, cold, calculating, utterly without remorse. The other woman remained a ghost, a presence I felt constantly but could never definitively name. I stalked his social media from a burner account, searched public records, desperate for a face, a name, a concrete target for my fury. But he kept her hidden. Another layer of protection, another wall built between me and the truth. It felt like I was fighting a war against an invisible enemy on multiple fronts: the legal system, his deception, the ghost of the other woman, and my own crumbling sense of self. The helplessness deepened, threatening to pull me under. All my attempts to get clear answers, to reclaim my money, to find solid ground, were met with resistance, lies, or bureaucratic inertia. It seemed he had thought of everything, leaving me with nothing but suspicion, anger, and the sinking feeling that I might never see my father's legacy again. The walls were closing in. Then came the day everything shifted. I was sitting alone in the quiet house, the silence amplifying the chaotic storm inside me. Staring at the bank statement again, the line item showing the final, large transfer from my inheritance account, the one that had emptied it. Tears welled up, hot and futile. This was it. It was gone. My father's legacy, stolen. My future, hijacked. A deep, guttural sob escaped my lips, a sound of pure, unadulterated defeat. I curled into a ball on the sofa, the weight of it all crushing me. I was helpless, powerless. He had won. He had taken everything, and there was nothing I could do. The lawyer was right. Years of messy legal battles, maybe for nothing. The thought was unbearable. I stayed there for hours, lost in a fog of despair. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the room, something changed. The tears dried. The sobs subsided. And in their place, a cold, hard core began to form in my gut. Helplessness. Powerlessness. Those weren't options. Not anymore. I looked around the house I had built with him, the house he had systematically betrayed me in. It felt foreign, hostile. But it was still my house, too. My name was on the deed. My things filled the rooms. And my money, my father's money, was out there somewhere, funding his deception. I sat up, a new kind of energy coursing through me. It wasn't the frantic energy of panic, but the quiet, focused intensity of a predator. What if I stopped playing by the rules? What if I stopped trying to prove he was wrong and focused on making him pay? Not in court, not in a way that would take years and drain me, but in a way that would hit him where it hurt the most. His control. His carefully constructed world. I thought about the digital paper trail, the strange intermediary account. I couldn't follow the money after it left that account, but I could look at the process of it going in and out. The dates. The times. The specific banking mechanisms he used. I wasn't a financial expert, but I was methodical. I started searching online. Banking regulations. Transfer protocols. The laws governing accounts, particularly those with multiple names.
Iris d'articles, forum discussion, legal blog.
My brain, dulled by despair, began to hum with a fierce, new purpose. There had to be a weakness. A vulnerability. A way to undo what he had done, not through the slow grind of the legal system, but with surgical precision. A line from a legal forum caught my eye. Under specific circumstances, and with sufficient evidence of fraud or error, certain types of electronic transfers can be reversed, but it requires immediate action and precise targeting, fraud or error. I had the fraud part covered. The immediate action and precise targeting? That required information. The kind of information he had kept hidden. But I knew the method he used for the initial transfer into the intermediary account. I knew the sending account, our joint one, and the receiving account, the strange one. And crucially, I knew the timing. The window of opportunity. The article talked about tracing the funds backwards if the receiving account hadn't dispersed them yet, or if the transaction was still within a certain processing window. The plot twist wasn't going to be about karma hitting him later. It was going to be about me right now, hitting him back harder, smarter, and faster than he could ever anticipate. The feeling was exhilarating, terrifying. It wasn't about getting arrested or doing anything illegal. It was about leveraging the very system he thought protected him. It was about using his own methods against him. The anger was still there, but it was cooler now, sharper. It was the edge of a knife. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was planning. And the plan began to take shape, piece by painstaking piece, in the quiet, empty house that had once been my sanctuary. Everything felt like it was moving underwater. Slow, distorted, muffled. The fake smiles, the forced conversations with him, the pretense of a normal life. Each interaction was a lead weight, dragging me down. I was a stranger in my own skin, playing a role in a tragedy he had written. The weight of the plan I was hatching was immense. It consumed my thoughts, my energy. Every waking moment was spent researching, cross-referencing, double-checking details. I dove deep into the intricacies of banking systems, the timing of international transfers, the specific codes and protocols that govern the movement of money. My laptop became an extension of my arm, the glow of the screen illuminating the dark circles under my eyes. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. Doubt was a constant companion, whispering insidious questions in my ear. What if I was wrong?
What if I missed something?
What if the window of opportunity closed before I was ready? The risk was enormous. If I failed, I would not only lose the money forever, but I would expose my hand, alerting him to my intentions and potentially facing legal repercussions myself for attempting to interfere with his accounts. The lawyer's words echoed in my mind. Tracing funds can be difficult. Messy, was I chasing a ghost? Was this desperate gamble worth the potential consequences? There were moments of intense fear, moments where I almost gave up, where the sheer exhaustion and emotional toll felt insurmountable. I picture myself in court, exposed, vulnerable, him watching with that same cold, lying gaze. The thought made me physically ill. The constant vigilance required to maintain the facade of ignorance was draining. I had to act like everything was normal, like I still trusted him, while secretly planning his downfall. I had to listen to his lies, his excuses, knowing they were poison, and smile. The mental gymnastics were exhausting. He seemed oblivious, emboldened perhaps by my apparent acquiescence. He was spending more freely now, less careful with his phone, more arrogant in his deception. This fueled my anger, hardening my resolve, but it also increased the stakes. The more he spent, the less chance I had of recovering anything. The ghost of the other woman felt closer now, more real. I imagined them together, spending my money, celebrating their betrayal. The image was a burning coal in my chest, a constant reminder of what I was fighting for. Not just the money, but my dignity, my sense of justice, the memory of my father. My normal life was gone. There was no going back. All that remained was the cold, relentless pursuit of vindication. The days blurred into a cycle of research, planning, and maintaining the elaborate deception at home. I became adept at hiding my true feelings, at constructing a wall of false calm around my seething core. The house was no longer a home, but a battleground. Every creak of the floorboards, every locked door, every hushed phone call became a potential threat, a sign that he might be one step ahead, might uncover my plan before I was ready. The loneliness was profound. I was isolated in my secret war, fighting alone against a man I had once shared everything with. All seemed lost. My inheritance was gone. My marriage was a lie, and the path to reclaiming what was mine seemed fraught with peril and uncertainty. I was at the bottom, staring up at an impossible climb. But the coldness in my gut had solidified into something unbreakable. Defeat was not an option. Not anymore. I stood by the window, watching the city lights blur outside. It was late. He was asleep, probably dreaming of his new life, the one he was building with my father's money. The house was silent, a tomb of broken promises. This was it. The plan was complete. The research, the timing, the identification of the precise moment the funds were vulnerable within the system. It had taken weeks, painstaking, soul-crushing weeks of delving into the digital underworld of banking transfers and legal loopholes. I knew the exact time the recent large transfer had cleared the initial gate, but hadn't yet been fully dispersed to the final recipient. There was a narrow window, a digital pause where the money was in transit, held in a kind of escrow within the network. And I knew how to target it. It wasn't about reporting fraud and waiting for an investigation. It was about initiating a specific type of reversal, citing a technical error in the originating instruction, leveraging a little-known clause about joint accounts and presumed intent unless explicitly stated otherwise. It was risky. It required precise timing, specific codes, and a certain degree of audacity. But it was possible. The lawyer would never have suggested it. It was too unconventional, too close to the edge. But I wasn't seeking conventional justice anymore. I was seeking reclamation. I wasn't the victim hiding in the shadows anymore. I was the one pulling the strings. The shift felt absolute. The fear was still a cold knot in my stomach, but it was overshadowed by a fierce, burning determination. This wasn't just about money. It was about proving that he couldn't just erase my past, steal my future, and walk away unscathed. It was about reclaiming my power. I walked to my desk, my movements slow and deliberate. I opened the secure browser, navigated to the banking portal. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silence. This was the point of no return. Once I initiated this, there was no going back. The consequences, win or lose, would be immense. I looked at the screen, at the complex sequence of account numbers, transaction IDs, and reversal codes I had painstakingly assembled. This wasn't just data, it was my weapon. The air in the room felt charged, thick with anticipation. The house held its breath. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the air cold in my lungs. My fingers, still trembling slightly, moved to the keyboard. The clock on the screen ticked forward. The window was opening. I had to act now. There was no hesitation left, only the cold, sharp edge of resolve. The victim was dead. The architect of his downfall was born in the silent, betrayed heart of his own home. I was ready. The cursor hovered over the Initiate Reversal button. My fingers shook slightly, then steadied. The city lights outside seemed to hold their breath. The silence in the house was absolute, broken only by the sound of my own shallow breathing. This was it. The culmination of weeks of hidden research, of sleepless nights, of maintaining a facade that felt like a second skin. He was asleep, oblivious, the architect of his own coming destruction. My eyes scanned the screen one last time, the account numbers, the transaction ID, the specific code for the type of reversal I was initiating. It wasn't about reporting fraud. It was about citing a technical error on the original outgoing transfer instruction from our joint account, exploiting a narrow loophole in banking regulations regarding joint account holder intent. The law was complex, but the principle I was leveraging was simple. As a joint account holder, I had a right to query and potentially reverse transfers made from that account, especially if I could demonstrate I had not authorized or been aware of the specific nature of the outgoing transaction. It was a long shot, relying on a precise sequence of digital events and the bank's automated systems processing the request within a specific time frame before the transfer fully settled at the mysterious intermediary account. But it was my only shot. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum against bone. Every nerve ending felt alive, hyper-aware. I clicked. A spinning wheel appeared on the screen. Time seemed to stretch and warp. My entire world narrowed to this glowing rectangle, to the slow, agonizing rotation of the digital symbol of processing. Every second was an eternity. Had it gone through? Had I missed something? Had the window closed? Sweat beaded on my forehead, cold despite the stifling tension in the room. Then the spinning wheel stopped. The screen refreshed. A notification box popped up. Transfer reversal initiated. Processing time may vary. You will be notified upon completion. Initiated. Not confirmed. Not completed. Just initiated. It was a small victory, a fragile foothold on the edge of the abyss. But it was a foothold. The money was, for a brief period, in limbo, hanging in the balance. But that wasn't the end of the plan. Reversing the stolen funds, if it even worked, was only half the equation. He still had access to our joint accounts, to his own accounts where he could stash other assets, other money earned while still married, money I was potentially entitled to. He could simply move more funds, continue his spending spree, hide assets. He had to be stopped. And he had to be blindsided. Utterly, completely blindsided. The lawyer had mentioned freezing accounts, but only as a potential step much later in divorce proceedings, requiring court orders and concrete proof of asset dissipation. I didn't have that kind of time. He was actively draining everything. I needed a faster, more direct approach. My research into banking regulations had yielded another piece of critical information. Certain actions by a joint account holder, actions suggesting potential financial malfeasance or a breakdown of trust within the joint ownership, could trigger an automatic review and temporary freeze by the bank's fraud prevention systems, particularly if combined with suspicious activity like large, unexplained transfers or attempted reversals. It was a nuclear option, designed to protect the bank and the account holders from potential fraud, but it could be triggered intentionally if you knew how. It wasn't just about getting my money back. It was about stopping him in his tracks, cutting off his access, leaving him financially exposed and vulnerable. It was about the plot twist. He thought he was untouchable, operating in the shadows, his transactions hidden behind layers of complexity. He didn't count on me understanding the system he was manipulating. He didn't count on me using the rules, the very dry, boring banking rules he thought were as shield as my sword. I opened another window, logged into our primary joint account. This account held the bulk of our remaining accessible funds, money for bills, expenses, daily life. Money he was slowly bleeding dry with his business expenses and secret life. I initiated a series of small, seemingly random transfers.
Ordinance.
To obscure payees I had set up, things like emergency pet fund or future garden supplies. Transactions that would look out of place, erratic. Then, using another function I had discovered, a rarely used feature for escalating transaction queries, I flagged several of his recent, legitimate-looking business transactions within the joint account as unrecognized and potentially fraudulent, citing vague concerns about unusual activity and lack of spousal authorization related to large outgoing sums. This was the most dangerous part, falsely flagging legitimate transactions. But I wasn't technically lying. I didn't recognize them in the context of our marriage, and they were unusual given the secret drain on my inheritance. It was a gray area, a deliberate manipulation of the system's triggers. The goal wasn't to reverse those transactions, but to trigger the bank's automated alert system. Large outgoing transfers followed by immediate, small, erratic outgoing transfers, coupled with flags on recent activity from one of the joint account holders, particularly following a query about a linked inheritance account reversal. It was a perfect storm of suspicious activity from the bank's perspective. It screamed fraud, dispute, marital breakdown with financial implications. It was designed to look less like a deliberate act by me and more like a system-triggered response to chaotic account activity. I initiated the flagged queries, sent the final batch of small, random transfers. Then I logged out, cleanly, silently. My hands were shaking violently now, not from fear, but from the sheer, exhilarating tension. I had done it. I had set the trap. The reversal was processing, hopefully pulling my father's money back from the brink. And the cascade of suspicious activity I had orchestrated in the joint account should, if my research was correct, trigger an automatic, temporary freeze on all linked accounts, including his personal ones, while the bank investigated the potential fraud scenario I had inadvertently created. He wouldn't get a warning. He wouldn't get a chance to move funds, to hide assets, to drain the accounts further. He would wake up, try to access his money, perhaps to pay for something related to her, perhaps just for daily expenses, and find everything locked down, frozen, inaccessible. By the time he figured out what was happening, the reversal might be complete, and all his financial lifelines would be severed, at least temporarily. The betrayal wasn't just being undone. It was being turned back on him, weaponized. I wasn't waiting for karma. I was delivering it myself, using the mundane, bureaucratic tools of the system he thought he had gamed. The plot twist wasn't some external force. It was me. The quiet, trusting wife. The victim. Except I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the one who had pulled the rug out from under him. I sat back, the adrenaline slowly draining away, leaving me shaky and hollowed out. The silence in the house felt different now. Not a tomb, but a waiting room. Waiting for the dawn. Waiting for the inevitable confrontation. Waiting for the moment he discovered the full, devastating extent of what I had done. The morning arrived like any other, except it wasn't. The air in the house crackled with an invisible energy, the tension I had carefully orchestrated now hanging heavy in the quiet rooms. He woke up, went through his usual routine. I made coffee, feigning normalcy, my heart pounding against my ribs like a drum of war. He sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone, sipping his coffee. I watched him from the corner of my eye, every muscle tense. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for him to step into it. It didn't take long. A frown creased his brow. He scrolled faster, tapping impatiently. His expression shifted from mild annoyance to confusion, then to alarm.
His phone rang.
He snatched it up, his voice sharp with irritation. Hello? What do you mean? Temporary hold. On which account? He listened for a moment, his eyes widening, his face draining of color. All of them?
What are you talking about?
There must be some mistake. He was talking to the bank. I could tell by his tone, the way he was trying to project authority and disbelief. He started asking frantic questions, his voice rising. Suspicious activity? What suspicious activity? Look, I need access to my funds. This is unacceptable. He slammed the phone down, his hand trembling. He immediately dialed another number, his expression panicked. This call was shorter, ending with a frustrated groan. He ran a hand through his hair, looking wild-eyed. He grabbed his laptop, his fingers fumbling with the keyboard, trying to log into the online banking portal. I watched him, a cold, detached observer. The plot twist was unfolding exactly as planned. He thought his carefully constructed scheme was foolproof. He thought he was untouchable. He never imagined I would understand the mechanisms he used, let alone turn them against him. The quiet wife, the one he thought was too trusting, too naive, too lost in her grief for her father to ever truly see him, had been watching, learning, waiting. He swore loudly, slamming the laptop lid shut. He jumped up from the table, pacing frantically, running his hands through his hair. He looked like a caged animal, his usual composure shattered. What the hell is going on? He muttered to himself, his voice rough with panic. Then his eyes landed on me, sitting there, calmly sipping my coffee, a small, enigmatic smile playing on my lips. The smile I hadn't allowed myself for weeks. He froze. His eyes, wild with panic moments before, narrowed.
He saw it then.
The cold satisfaction in my gaze. The utter lack of surprise. The dawning horror on his face was a sight I would replay in my mind forever. He stumbled back, bumping into a chair. You, he whispered, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. You did something. I didn't say a word. I just held his gaze, letting him see the truth in my eyes. He started shaking his head, a frantic, disbelieving gesture.
No.
You couldn't have. How could you have? I was careful, his voice trailed off as he pieced it together. The unusual activity. The timing. My strange calm. He knew. He knew I had figured it out, that I had discovered his theft, his betrayal. But he had expected tears, accusations, maybe a messy fight. He hadn't expected this. This quiet, surgical dismantling of his financial world. He hadn't expected the victim to become the predator, using his own weapons against him. The money, he stammered, his voice barely audible. The inheritance money. It's gone. It's not where I sent it. His eyes flickered to mine, a desperate, pleading look mixed with terror.
You
reversed it. I nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. And the accounts, he whispered, his voice raspy. They're frozen. All of them. How did you? I finally spoke, my voice low and steady, laced with a cold triumph that sent shivers down my own spine. Paper trails, darling. More powerful than emotions. You left too many of them. And you underestimated me. He stared at me, his face contorted in a mask of disbelief and utter defeat. The man who had prided himself on being in control, on being smarter than everyone else, on getting away with it, was watching his carefully constructed world crumble around him. He had stolen my father's legacy to buy a future with another woman, confident I would never be able to stop him. He was wrong. I hadn't just stopped him. I had turned his own actions into a noose around his neck. He made a choked sound, a gasp that turned into a ragged sob. His legs seemed to give out. He collapsed onto the kitchen floor, a heap of expensive fabric and shattered arrogance. His face was buried in his hands, his body shaking with helpless, furious sobs. The sound filled the silent room, the sound of a man losing everything he thought he had won. I watched him, felt a flicker of something that might have once been pity, quickly extinguished by the memory of his lies, his betrayal, the cold calculation in his eyes as he stole from me. He had thought he held all the cards. He didn't know I had been playing a different game entirely. The game was over. And I had won. The silence after his collapse was profound. He lay there on the floor, a broken thing, his sobs eventually subsiding into shuddering breaths. I didn't move. I didn't offer comfort. There was none to give. The victory felt hollowed out, tainted by the years of lies, by the sheer waste of it all. I had won, but the cost was immense. My marriage, my trust, my vision of a shared future, all lay in ruins around us. The money, my father's legacy, was in limbo, its reversal initiated, but not yet confirmed. His accounts were frozen, his plans derailed. He was exposed, vulnerable, his infidelity and theft laid bare not just to me, but potentially to the bank's fraud department, to the legal system. The divorce was swift, brutal, clinical. With his finances frozen and the cloud of potential fraud hanging over him, his ability to fight, to hide assets, was severely curtailed. The evidence I had meticulously gathered, the bank statements, the timestamps, my own orchestrated suspicious activity that triggered the freeze, created a clear picture of his actions. The lawyer, initially cautious, became a fierce advocate, leveraging the situation I had created. The inheritance money, confirmed to be in the process of reversal due to my timely action and the technicality I exploited, became a separate issue, eventually returned to my account after a lengthy review process by the bank. It felt surreal, seeing that balance restored, a digital ghost of my father's love and foresight returned to its rightful place. The joint assets were divided, the house sold. Every transaction, every legal document, was steeped in the bitter taste of betrayal and the cold satisfaction of vindication. There was no grand reconciliation, no tearful confessions. Just lawyers, paperwork, and the systematic dissolution of a life we had built together. In the aftermath, I was left with a strange mix of emotions. There was relief, certainly. The gnawing anxiety about the money was gone. The constant vigilance, the facade of normalcy, that heavy burden was lifted. There was satisfaction, a deep, quiet pleasure in knowing that I hadn't been broken, that I had fought back, that I had won on my own terms, blindsiding the person who thought they could destroy me. He got his comeuppance not by chance but by my design. But beneath the satisfaction lay a profound sadness. Not for him, he had made his choices, but for the loss of the life I thought I had. For the years of deception I had been blind to. For the man I thought I married, who never truly existed. I looked at the world differently now. More cautiously, with a sharper eye for detail, for inconsistencies. Trust wasn't given freely anymore. It had to be earned, slowly, carefully. The experience had carved a new path through my heart, leaving scars, but also a hardened resilience. I had learned that the most dangerous weapons weren't always loud or obvious. Sometimes they were hidden in plain sight, in the complex rules of the systems we rely on, waiting for someone patient and determined enough to find them. My father's legacy was safe, a symbol of my independence and strength. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to build, brick by painstaking brick, this time on a foundation of my own making, built with eyes wide open. I wasn't the same person who had sat, trembling, looking at that first transfer notification. I was colder, maybe, wiser, definitely, and stronger than I ever thought possible. The quiet hum of life wasn't soft anymore. It was sharper, clearer, carrying the echo of the storm I had weathered and the quiet certainty that I had emerged from it, unbroken. If this story hit close to home, if you've ever faced a moment where you had to find strength you didn't know you had, I'd love to hear your version if you feel comfortable sharing. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. And thank you for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these stories to life.